It's your boy, Calix Boxing here. Let me get this mic set up correctly. Y'all bear with me real quick. Check, check. I think we're good now. Let me get the speakers done right. Yep, we're good. Hit that sub button for nightly boxing videos. My apologies for the mic there. And let me get the camera back up. But I wanted to do this quick video, and I'll put the poll question up here later. So make sure to look up for the poll question as well. I was on Twitter earlier, and I saw somebody post the Colin Cowherd, I believe it was yesterday on his show, talking about basically recapping McGregor versus Diaz, which was a good fight. It's a good fight, and don't think I'm disrespecting UFC at all, or just being disrespectful to the sport whatsoever and to mixed martial arts. That's not what I'm doing here. But what I did want to address is people do this thing where they pit against boxing, and you can't be for both. You have to either pick one side or the other. It's Bloods versus Crips, and there is no picking the other side. And it's frustrating. It's unbelievably frustrating. And they do this thing where they have to pit mixed martial artist versus boxer, and they're trying to do this again they're trying to hype this thing again with McGregor versus Mayweather, and Amir Khan's calling out McGregor for boxing and an MMA double header, and trying to do this thing where we have to figure out what the better sport is, as if that's going to be solved, or if it's something that can be solved. It's all subjective, man. It's about what you like. But getting to Cowherd came on his show and said that McGregor versus Diaz is the best fight he's seen in 20 years. And McGregor versus Diaz is, and I guess he's saying our, as far as a UFC fan, he's saying that's our Ali versus Frazier. I guess he's saying that's the UFC fans version of it, or maybe he's saying it's this generation's Ali versus Frazier. If that's what he's saying, this is even more ignorant than I thought. I'm not sure what he was getting at there, but to compare McGregor versus Diaz to arguably probably the greatest trilogy of all time, Ali versus Frazier, is just beyond ignorant and beyond disrespectful on every level. Close. And that's the problem with the UFC guys when they start these arguments, is there is no history when it comes to UFC. There is no history. It doesn't date back far enough. When you talk about Brock Lesnar as Brock Lesnar was fighting for a heavyweight title fight, and it's like a second or third fight. The sport just does not have history yet. Okay. And I'm not one of those that says this is a fly-by-night thing and it's going to go away. I think UFC will be here for a long time. But as of right now in 2016, it just doesn't have that history. And to compare this fight to that, and then on top of that, to say that boxing is dead, that this fight was the nail in the coffin, this is when it gets even more ignorant, because the UFC guys like to do. They like to take credit for boxing being in bad shape, as if UFC has something to do with that. It doesn't. All right, boxing is the reason that boxing is in bad shape. And to say that boxing is, dude, people have been saying boxing is dead for a century now. Right? There are articles dating back to the 20s and 30s about boxing is dead, boxing is dead, boxing is dead, and it's not dead. And how could we talk about boxing in the present and future if it's dead? There are fights this weekend. There were fights tonight. If it's dead, there would be no fights. If it was dead, there would be nothing for us to talk about. So maybe we're talking about semantics there, because obviously he may not mean it technically, or he may not really mean that the sport is dead. It's an art form. It can't die. It's not going to go anywhere. But maybe he's saying that boxing is in terrible shape right now and is beyond repairable. Look, and I'm a boxing fan, that boxing is a niche sport. It is where it is. I mean, if you look at ESPN on their website, boxing comes up as like number 16, 17, something like that, behind like women's softball. It is where it is, man. But it is where it is because of boxing. Boxing is its own worst enemy. UFC has nothing to do, or very little to do, with that it's in. It's just not an intelligent argument for a UFC fan to take credit for boxing's demise. It just doesn't. And for the life of me, man, I just don't understand why they're doing this UFC versus boxing thing that they've been doing for over a decade now, as if it matters. All right. If you like UFC, you like UFC. I'm fine with that. Look, I like watching Conor McGregor fight. I like it. I like McGregor versus Diaz. It's not Ali versus Frazier. It's just not. But I liked it. I enjoyed it. Let's leave it at that. And boxing, if you like boxing, you like boxing. I don't understand why UFC fans are always going in boxing fans' faces and saying boxing is dead, boxing is this. Why do you watch that terrible sport? Blah, blah, blah. Just leave them alone, dude. We'll leave you alone. And that's that. We don't have to pit the two against each other. I go to UFC fight parties most of the time, 90% of the time. I don't enjoy what I'm watching on TV. I just go for the wings. I go for the beer. But every once in a while, we get a good fight, like McGregor versus Diaz, that I enjoy. I like stand-up. I like stand-up fighting. It's not necessarily great boxing. I haven't seen any great boxers in a UFC octagon, but I enjoy stand-up fighting. I do. I enjoy guys punching each other, whether it be in the boxing ring, whether it be in the octagon, or whether it be on World Star. Guys and that's pretty much, for the most part, what you're getting from stand-up fighting in the octagon anyway, is guys throwing arm punches. But it is what it is. And I should be able to go to a UFC fight without people badgering me about liking boxing. But let's get back to Cowherd. To make, and I don't necessarily have a problem with Cowherd. I don't listen to his show. But I have friends who do. And once again, if that's what you like, that's what you like. But I just don't understand making these crazy statements, these outrageous statements after sporting events, which a lot of these mainstream guys do. And what these mainstream guys do too is they feel the need to talk about what's popular in sports for that day or the next day, even if they're ignorant on the topic. Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith come on and they talk about when they were on First Take and talk about boxing, when you can tell they just don't have the knowledge to talk about boxing. And it's the same thing with Cowherd. And it's even the same thing when these guys are talking about UFC. Like I follow UFC guys on here on YouTube and who are on the hardcore shows, like the Joe Rogan type guys. And you can tell they know what they're talking about. Technically, they know what they're talking about. But then when you get down to Cowherds and the Skip Baylesses and Stephen A. Smith, you know, when it comes to combat sports, they don't know what they're talking about. You can tell. I'm not going to get on here and talk about hockey. I don't know anything. I don't know a blue line from a red line. I don't even know if there is a red line. I don't know anything about hockey. So I'm not going to disrespect hockey fans by coming on here and trying to talk about hockey to anybody. All right. And especially when these guys have huge audiences and then they're spreading this nonsense to the masses about McGregor and Diaz being Ali versus Frazier and that being the end of boxing. That fight being, dude, if boxing ends next week, it's going to be because of boxing. If the ratings plummet, we saw Errol Spence Jr. do 6 million viewers on NBC on Sunday. Primetime NBC on Sunday, he did 6 million viewers. If boxing was dead, that wouldn't be possible. If boxing was dead, and yes, it had a huge lead in from the gold medal game, but if boxing was dead, people would just tune out. They wouldn't have watched. They wouldn't have stuck around. If boxing was dead, as bad as the fight sucked, Mayweather versus Pacquiao wouldn't have done 4.5 million last year in pay-per-view buys. It's not possible. Like, let the bias go. I admit UFC, the product is incredible. It's an incredible product. Technically, not my thing. It's not aesthetically pleasing to me, but I admit the product is incredible. It's a great product. Come on here and let my bias get in the way and say, "Oh, UFC sucks. It's terrible." No, man, it's a good product. Once in a while, I stumble upon a good fight. It is what it is. I don't understand why the bias gets in the way to where you can come on your show, a national broadcast, and tell people that boxing is dead because of McGregor versus Diaz. That's the nail in the coffin. That's what he said. How? It's pathetic, man. It's absolutely pathetic. And you would think that you would have to back that up. Look, Errol Spence Jr., Chocolatito, these guys are going to fill a vacuum when Mayweather and Pacquiao are completely out of the picture. Guys like that are going to come up. There are going to be other superstars that come up. Canelo, these superstars are going to come up. And yes, the pay-per-view market is not good right now in boxing, but either something else is going to come along or the pay-per-view market will rebound in a couple of years. It will. Hopefully the economy rebounds and that will too. And the backlash from Mayweather Pacquiao will go away and it's going to rebound. Okay. And there will be other superstars. To make a crazy statement like that, I have to back that up. But a year from now, 2 years from now, when another huge fight comes around, and he's going to be talking about it, and people are going to totally forget that 2 years ago, he even said this. That's just the truth of it. Once again, that's reality. You can't deny reality. He'll probably talk about how boxing sucks and how it's dead again. Rinse and repeat. But I'm just sick of this whole boxing versus UFC, man. Why can't people just enjoy what they like and then leave other people alone? To make an asinine, ignorant statement like this, look, you know boxing is not dead. It's a niche sport. It is what it is. Will it ever be one of the top 3, 4, 5 sports in the world, in America again? No, I don't think it will. But it's still there. It's still sustainable. It's still surviving. It's still a niche sport. It's still going to be on TV. It's still going to be on HBO Showtime. It's still going to be streaming. Right now, it's on network TV because Al Hammond is dishing out his own money to get it on network TV. It's there. It's there. It is not dead. It's right in front of your face. It's still doing numbers. It's still doing ratings. I don't understand what's so difficult for people to see that and just admit it. I don't understand it. UFC people leave boxing people alone. Boxing people leave UFC people alone. If you like both, enjoy both. I like to dabble in UFC every once in a while, but man, people stop being miserable. Just stop being miserable. And just let people enjoy what they want to enjoy. Son of a bitch.